This is my true story. 6 months ago, my wife started making me sleep in the guest room every night, claiming my snoring was unbearable. She said it was temporary until her sleep schedule improved. But then she started locking our master bedroom door from the inside. I could hear the deadbolt click every night at 10 o'clock. When I asked why she needed to lock the door, she had excuses about feeling secure or sleepwalking. After 3 months, I started hearing strange sounds from behind that locked door. Last Tuesday, I hid inside our bedroom closet before she locked the door. What I discovered destroyed our marriage. Before that, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. And please subscribe to this channel so that my stories can reach more people. 6 months ago, my wife Karen developed a nighttime habit that seemed strange to me, but I was too trusting to question it deeply at first. We'd been married for 8 years and had what I thought was a solid relationship. We rarely fought. We enjoyed spending time together. We shared the same bedroom and had a normal married life. Then suddenly one evening she told me we needed to start sleeping in separate rooms. She said my snoring had gotten unbearable lately, and it was affecting her ability to sleep. Karen explained that she'd been having terrible insomnia for weeks. She said she'd lie awake for hours listening to me snore, and it was making her exhausted at work. She worked at a marketing firm and had been under a lot of stress with big projects and tight deadlines. She said the lack of sleep was affecting her job performance, and she couldn't afford to keep functioning on 3 or 4 hours of sleep per night. She needed proper rest to do her work effectively. I felt terrible hearing this. I had no idea my snoring was causing her so much trouble. I offered to see a doctor about it. Maybe I had sleep apnea or something that could be treated. But Karen said we didn't need to go through all that medical stuff right away. She suggested a simpler solution. I should just sleep in the guest room for a while until she got her sleep schedule back on track. She promised it was temporary, just a few weeks until her insomnia improved. So I agreed to move to the guest room. It seemed like a reasonable solution to help my wife get the rest she needed. The guest room was comfortable enough. I packed some clothes and toiletries and set myself up in there. The first few nights felt weird sleeping apart after 8 years of sharing a bed. But I told myself it was temporary and it was the right thing to do to help Karen with her sleep problems. Then I started noticing something odd. Every night around 10 o'clock, Karen would go into our master bedroom and close the door. I could hear her moving around in there getting ready for bed. Then I'd hear a distinct sound that made me pause. The deadbolt lock clicking into place. She was locking the bedroom door from the inside every single night. Not just closing it, but actually locking it with the deadbolt. This struck me as strange. We'd never locked interior doors in our house before. There was no reason to lock a bedroom door when it was just the two of us living there. But when I asked Karen about it the next morning, she had an explanation ready. She said locking the door made her feel more secure. She said it helped her relax and fall asleep knowing the door was locked. It seemed like an odd explanation, but I didn't want to push the issue. A few days later, I asked about the locked door again because it was still bothering me. Karen gave me a different explanation this time. She said she'd been sleepwalking recently and didn't want to wander around the house at night. Locking the door would keep her safely in the bedroom if she started sleepwalking. This explanation seemed somewhat reasonable. I'd heard of people locking bedroom doors to prevent sleepwalking. So again, I didn't question it too much. The sleeping arrangement that Karen promised would be temporary for just a few weeks stretched into months. 1 week became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became a month. 1 month became 3 months. Every night I slept alone in the guest room while Karen locked herself in our master bedroom. Every morning she'd emerge from the locked room and we'd have breakfast together like everything was normal. She never mentioned going back to sleeping in the same bed. I started to wonder if this was going to be permanent. I trusted my wife completely. We'd been married for 8 years without any major problems. I had no reason to suspect she was being dishonest with me. So I accepted her explanations about the locked door, even though something about the whole situation felt off to me. As the weeks turned into months, I started asking Karen more frequently about when we'd go back to sleeping in the same bedroom. I missed having my wife next to me at night. I missed the intimacy of sharing a bed. I missed falling asleep together and waking up together. But every time I brought it up, Karen had reasons why we needed to continue the separate sleeping arrangement. Her insomnia was still bad. Her work stress hadn't improved. She still needed the quiet and security of sleeping alone. I also kept asking about why she felt the need to lock the bedroom door every single night. It bothered me more as time went on. We lived in a safe neighborhood. We had good locks on all the exterior doors and a security system. There was no logical reason to lock an interior bedroom door when it was just the two of us in the house, but Karen always had explanations ready when I questioned her about it. Sometimes she'd tell me the locked door made her feel more secure and safe. She'd say that knowing the door was locked helped her anxiety and allowed her to relax enough to fall asleep. She made it sound like a psychological comfort thing that helped with her insomnia. Other times, she'd mention the sleepwalking excuse again. She'd say she was worried about wandering around the house in her sleep, and the locked door kept her contained safely in the bedroom. The explanations varied depending on when I asked, but they all sounded reasonable enough on the surface. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who didn't trust his wife, or who made a big deal out of small things. Karen had always been honest with me throughout our marriage. I had no history of her lying or being deceptive. So even though my gut told me something was off about this whole situation, I pushed those feelings down and tried to believe what she was telling me. Our sex life had basically disappeared during this time, which should have been another red flag. When you sleep in separate rooms and barely see each other except at breakfast and dinner, the opportunities for intimacy decrease dramatically. When I'd try to initiate anything, Karen would say she was too tired or too stressed from work. She'd promise things would get better once her insomnia improved. She'd say we just needed to be patient a little longer. I started feeling lonely in my own marriage. I was living with my wife, but we weren't really living together anymore. We were like roommates who happened to be married. We'd eat meals together and make small talk, but there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. The locked bedroom door at night felt like a symbol of that distance, a physical barrier between us that represented the emotional barrier growing in our relationship. But I kept telling myself this was temporary. Karen kept saying it was temporary, just a phase related to her work stress and sleep problems. Once things calmed down at her job and her insomnia got better, we'd go back to normal. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I loved my wife and trusted her completely. The idea that she might be lying to me about any of this never seriously crossed my mind. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was. How I ignored obvious warning signs because I didn't want to face the possibility that something was seriously wrong. But at the time, I genuinely believed Karen's explanations. I thought I was being a supportive, understanding husband by giving her the space and security she said she needed. I thought sleeping separately and accepting the locked door was a temporary sacrifice I was making for the sake of my wife's well-being and our marriage. I had no idea what was really happening behind that locked door every night. After 3 months of this strange sleeping arrangement, I started noticing sounds coming from our locked master bedroom at night. I'd be lying in the guest room trying to fall asleep, and I'd hear noises through the walls. Our house wasn't that big, so sound traveled easily between rooms. At first I thought maybe I was imagining things, or maybe it was just normal household sounds I'd never noticed before when I was sleeping in that room myself. But the sounds kept happening night after night, and they didn't sound like someone sleeping alone. I'd hear muffled voices like Karen was talking to someone. Sometimes I'd hear laughter. Not loud laughter, but quiet giggling like she was amused by something. I'd hear movements and shifting around that seemed like more activity than one person sleeping should make. The sounds would go on for hours, sometimes late into the night. One night I got up and walked quietly down the hallway to stand outside our bedroom door. I pressed my ear against it, trying to hear what was going on inside. I could definitely hear Karen's voice. She was talking to someone. The words were muffled through the door, so I couldn't make out what she was saying, but I could hear the tone. She sounded happy and excited. She sounded engaged in conversation. But I couldn't hear another voice responding, which confused me. I knocked on the door and asked if everything was okay. There was sudden silence inside the room. Then after a few seconds, Karen called out, asking what I wanted. I said I'd heard voices and wanted to make sure she was all right. She said she was fine and had just been watching videos on her phone. She told me to go back to bed and stop worrying. So I went back to the guest room feeling confused and suspicious, but not sure what to think. The next morning at breakfast, I mentioned the sounds I'd been hearing at night. I told Karen it sounded like she was talking to someone or watching something loud. I said I was concerned and wanted to know what was going on. She looked at me like I was being ridiculous. She said I was hearing things. She said the house just made noises at night, and I was imagining it was something more than it was. When I insisted I'd definitely heard her voice and laughter, she changed her explanation. She admitted she'd been watching videos and shows on her phone to help her fall asleep. She said it was part of her routine to deal with the insomnia. She'd watch comedy clips or talk shows to relax her mind. She apologized if the sound was carrying through the walls and said she'd use headphones from now on. But the sounds didn't stop even after she supposedly started using headphones. I'd still hear muffled voices and movement from the locked bedroom. Sometimes I'd hear what sounded like music or other people talking. It definitely wasn't just one person lying in bed trying to sleep. Something was going on in that room that Karen wasn't being honest about. I started questioning my own perceptions. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress of sleeping separately and feeling distant from my wife was making me imagine problems that weren't really there. Karen certainly acted like I was overreacting when I brought up my concerns. She'd get defensive and tell me I was being ridiculous. She'd say I was hurt about sleeping separately and was looking for things to be upset about. She'd turn it around on me and make me feel guilty for not trusting her. She'd say things like, "Why are you spying on me at night?" Or, "Do you really think I'm doing something wrong?" She made me feel like the problem was my suspicious mind rather than her secretive behavior. And because I loved her and wanted to believe her, I'd back down and try to convince myself she was right. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. The locked door every night. The sounds that didn't match someone sleeping alone. The explanations that kept changing. The way Karen got defensive whenever I asked questions. My gut was screaming at me that my wife was hiding something behind that locked bedroom door. I just didn't know what it was yet, and I was about to find out in the worst possible way. Last Tuesday, something inside me finally snapped. I couldn't take the not knowing anymore. I couldn't keep lying in the guest room every night, hearing strange sounds from our locked bedroom and accepting Karen's dismissive explanations. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when my gut was telling me something was very wrong. I needed to know the truth about what was happening behind that locked door every night. I needed to see for myself what my wife was doing in there. I started planning how I could discover what was really going on without Karen knowing I was suspicious. I couldn't just burst into the locked room because she'd hear me trying to break down the door. I couldn't confront her directly because she'd just give me more excuses and explanations that would make me doubt myself. I needed actual proof of whatever was happening. I needed to catch her in the act of whatever she was hiding from me. That's when I came up with the plan to hide in our bedroom closet. The master bedroom had a large walk-in closet with sliding doors. It was big enough that I could hide in there behind the hanging clothes without being seen. If I could get into the closet before Karen locked the bedroom door for the night, I could stay hidden and see exactly what she was doing. It felt crazy and paranoid to be planning to spy on my own wife like this. But I was desperate for answers. Tuesday morning, I told Karen I'd be working late at the office that night. I said I had a big project deadline and wouldn't be home until after midnight. I watched her face when I told her this, and I saw something flash in her eyes. It looked like relief, like she was happy I'd be gone. That reaction confirmed my suspicions that she was up to something. A wife who missed her husband wouldn't look relieved to hear he'd be working late. I went to work as usual that morning, but I could barely focus on anything. All I could think about was my plan for that evening. I was nervous and anxious about what I might discover. Part of me hoped I was wrong about everything. Part of me hoped I'd hide in that closet and find out Karen really was just watching videos on her phone to help with insomnia. But another part of me knew I was about to uncover something that would change everything. I left the office at my normal time around 5:30. I drove home like usual and pulled into our driveway. But instead of going inside, I sat in my car for a few minutes, making sure Karen saw me arrive. Then I backed out of the driveway and drove around the block. I parked on a side street where my car wouldn't be visible from our house. I waited about 20 minutes to give Karen time to think I'd left for my late work session. Then I quietly walked back to our house using the back entrance. I had my key ready, and I unlocked the door as silently as possible. I stepped inside and closed the door without making a sound. The house was quiet. I could hear Karen upstairs in what sounded like our bedroom. I took off my shoes so my footsteps wouldn't make noise. Then I crept up the stairs, moving as carefully as possible. I made it to our bedroom door without being detected. It was still early, around 6:30, so Karen hadn't locked herself in yet. She was probably in the bathroom or getting changed. I slipped into the bedroom and went straight to the walk-in closet. I slid the door open just enough to get inside and then closed it most of the way, leaving just a small crack so I could see out into the bedroom. I positioned myself behind Karen's hanging dresses and work clothes. I crouched down low and settled in for what I knew would be a long wait. It was only 6:30, and Karen didn't usually lock the bedroom door until 10. I had over 3 hours to wait in this closet, but I was committed now. I was going to find out the truth no matter how long it took. I crouched in that closet for over 3 hours, waiting for 10 o'clock to arrive. Those were the longest 3 hours of my life. My legs started cramping from staying in the same position. My back ached from being hunched over. I had to shift my weight carefully every few minutes to keep my legs from going completely numb. But I couldn't make any noise, or Karen would discover me hiding there. So I suffered in silence, waiting and watching through the small crack in the closet door. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid Karen might hear it. The adrenaline and anxiety made my hands shake. I felt ridiculous hiding in my own bedroom closet, spying on my own wife. This wasn't the kind of thing normal married couples did. This was the behavior of someone who suspected their spouse of serious betrayal. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. Part of me still wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation for everything. Around 7 o'clock, I heard Karen come into the bedroom. I held my breath, terrified she might open the closet and find me. But she just walked past and went into the bathroom. I heard the shower turn on. She was in there for about 30 minutes. Then she came back out, and I could see her through the crack in the closet door. She was wrapped in a towel with her hair wet. She went to her dresser and started getting ready for bed. I watched her go through her normal nighttime routine. She dried her hair, she put on lotion, she changed into pajamas. Everything looked completely normal. She was just getting ready for bed like she did every night. I started wondering if I'd made a huge mistake hiding in this closet. Maybe there really was nothing going on. Maybe I was being paranoid and crazy. Maybe I'd just wasted 3 hours cramped in a closet for nothing. At 9:30, Karen got into bed with her laptop. She propped herself up against the pillows and opened the computer. From my position in the closet, I could see the side of the bed, but I couldn't see the laptop screen. I could see Karen's face illuminated by the screen glow. She was checking something, scrolling through something, just looking at her phone or computer like millions of people do before bed. Still nothing suspicious. Then, at exactly 10 o'clock, Karen got up from the bed and walked to the bedroom door. I heard her close it firmly. Then I heard the sound I'd been hearing every night for 6 months. The deadbolt clicking into place. She'd locked the bedroom door from the inside just like she did every single night. My wife had just locked us both in the bedroom together, except she had no idea I was there hiding in her closet. Karen walked back to the bed and got comfortable against the pillows again. She had her laptop positioned in front of her. There was silence for a few minutes. She seemed to be waiting for something, checking the time on her phone, looking at the laptop screen. Then she smiled, a big, genuine smile that lit up her face in a way I hadn't seen in months. She looked excited and happy. Then she spoke out loud in a bright, cheerful voice. "Okay, he's gone. Come on in. We have all night together." My blood turned to ice hearing those words. She was talking to someone. She'd just told someone that I was gone and they could come in. But there was nobody else in the room. Nobody had come through the door. I didn't understand what was happening. Then I heard another voice, a man's voice. It was coming from her laptop speakers. "Finally. I've been waiting all day to see you, baby. I missed you so much." Karen laughed, that soft, intimate laugh I recognized from when we first started dating. She was looking at her laptop screen with love and desire in her eyes. And suddenly I understood. She wasn't having an affair with someone physically in our bedroom. She was having a virtual affair. She was talking to another man through her computer. A man's voice was coming from Karen's laptop speakers, responding to what she'd just said. The voice sounded warm and familiar, like they'd been talking for a long time. Finally, I can see you. I've been thinking about you all day at work. I couldn't concentrate on anything knowing we'd get to talk tonight." My wife giggled at this. She actually giggled like a teenager talking to her crush. The sound made me sick to my stomach. Through the crack in the closet door, I could see Karen adjusting the laptop camera angle. She was positioning it to get a better view of herself. Then she reached for something on the nightstand. When she sat back against the pillows, I could see she'd changed. She wasn't wearing the modest pajamas I'd seen her put on earlier. She was now wearing black lingerie I'd never seen before. Expensive-looking lace and silk that definitely hadn't come from our joint bank account. She settled back against the pillows wearing this lingerie and smiled at the laptop camera with an expression of pure intimacy. It was the same look she used to give me when we first started dating. That special smile reserved for someone you love and desire. Except now she was giving that smile to a stranger on a computer screen while her husband hid in the closet watching his marriage fall apart. The man's voice came through the speakers again. "God, you look incredible. That lingerie is perfect on you. I can't wait until we can be together in person and I can take it off you myself." Karen laughed and said something flirty back to him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife was having explicit conversations with another man in our bed, in the bedroom we'd shared for 8 years. Behind the door, she locked every night supposedly because of insomnia. I realized with horror that this was why she'd made me move to the guest room 6 months ago. It had nothing to do with my snoring or her sleep problems. She needed me out of the bedroom so she could lock the door and have these video calls with this man. She needed privacy to conduct her affair without me walking in or hearing what was happening. The separate sleeping arrangement had been planned specifically to facilitate her betrayal. Through the small crack in the closet door, I watched my wife settle more comfortably on our bed. She propped the laptop up on a pillow so the camera had a good angle. Then she started talking to this man named Derek. I could hear his name clearly now. Derek. She kept saying his name with affection and intimacy. "I missed you today, Derek. Work was so boring. All I could think about was getting home to talk to you." Derek responded with similar sentiments. He talked about how much he'd been thinking about her, how he couldn't wait to see her face, how these nightly video calls were the highlight of his day. They talked like a couple in love, like two people who'd been together for years and knew each other deeply. The familiarity and comfort between them made it clear this wasn't a new thing. They'd been doing this for a while. I watched Karen's face as she talked to him. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months, more alive and engaged. She was laughing at his jokes. She was telling him about her day. She was asking about his life. They were having the kind of intimate conversation that married couples have. Except she was having it with him instead of with me, her actual husband, who was crouched in a closet 6 feet away watching the whole thing. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't just a casual online flirtation. This wasn't just some meaningless virtual connection. My wife was in love with this man. She'd developed real feelings for him. And he clearly had feelings for her too. They were having a full relationship through these video calls. A relationship that had been going on right under my nose for months while I slept alone in the guest room believing her lies about insomnia. For the next hour, I stayed hidden in that closet, watching and listening in complete horror as my wife conducted a full virtual affair with this man, Derek. It wasn't just talking. It wasn't just friendly conversation. They were being intimate in ways that made me want to scream. Karen was touching herself while talking to him. Derek was doing the same on his end. They were having virtual sex right there on our bed while I crouched in the closet, feeling like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. The things they said to each other were things married people say, personal, intimate details about their desires and fantasies. Karen was telling this stranger things about what she wanted that she'd never told me. She was opening up emotionally and physically to him in ways she'd stopped doing with me months ago. I realized our sex life hadn't disappeared because of her work stress. It disappeared because she was getting her needs met by Derek through these nightly video sessions. Between the explicit parts, they talked like a real couple making plans for their future together. Derek would say things like, "I can't wait until we're together every night instead of just on video." Karen would respond talking about how much she wanted that too. how she dreamed about waking up next to him, how she imagined their life together once they could finally be in the same place physically instead of separated by distance. I learned from their conversation that Derek lived in another state. He was in California while we lived in Ohio. They'd met online somehow through work or social media, I couldn't tell exactly. But they'd been talking for at least 8 months based on references they made to past conversations. 8 months. My wife had been conducting this relationship for 8 months while lying to me every single day about locked doors and insomnia. Then the conversation took an even darker turn. Karen started talking about her plans for leaving me. She told Derek she was being careful and strategic about it. She said she was working with a divorce attorney to build the best possible case for getting a favorable settlement. My stomach dropped hearing this. She wasn't just having an affair. She was actively planning to divorce me and take as much money as possible in the process. Derek asked how her divorce planning was going. Karen smiled and said it was going perfectly. She explained that she'd been documenting evidence of our failing marriage for her attorney. The fact that we slept in separate rooms was proof we were living separate lives. My work schedule and late hours were evidence of abandonment and neglect. She was building a narrative that I was a bad husband who'd driven her away through my behavior. She actually laughed while telling Derek this. She thought it was clever how she'd manipulated the situation. She'd convinced me to sleep in the guest room by lying about my snoring. Then she used that sleeping arrangement as evidence in her divorce case that our marriage was broken. She'd turned my willingness to accommodate her supposed sleep problems into ammunition to use against me in court. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Karen told Derek she was aiming for significant alimony based on the length of our marriage and the lifestyle I'd provided. She said her lawyer thought she had a strong case for ongoing support payments. She talked about the house we owned and how she'd try to keep it in the divorce settlement. She discussed our retirement accounts and investments and how they'd be split. She was planning every detail of how to financially destroy me. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Just a few more months of playing the good wife and gathering evidence. Then I'll file for divorce and we can finally be together, Derek. We can start our real life instead of hiding behind screens. Derek responded enthusiastically, talking about how he couldn't wait, how they'd been planning this for so long, how it would all be worth it when they could finally be together in person permanently. They'd already met in person. Karen casually mentioned their 2 previous meetings during her supposed business trips. Trips I'd supported and encouraged because I thought they were good for her career. She'd actually been flying to California to spend weekends with Derek in hotel rooms while I stayed home working and believing her lies. Their conversation continued, and I learned the full horrifying scope of what my wife had been planning behind my back. This wasn't some impulsive affair that got out of control. This was a calculated long-term scheme to destroy our marriage while maximizing what she could take from me financially. Karen had been working with a divorce attorney for at least 4 months, building a case against me. Every aspect of our life together had been weaponized and twisted into evidence of my failures as a husband. The sleeping arrangement she'd insisted on was the centerpiece of her strategy. Her attorney had apparently advised her that proof of living separate lives would strengthen her divorce case. Separate bedrooms could be presented as evidence that the marriage was irreparably broken. It showed we weren't functioning as a married couple anymore. So Karen had manufactured the whole situation by lying about my snoring and her insomnia. She'd forced me out of our bedroom specifically to create evidence she could use against me later. My work schedule was another piece of her strategy. I worked long hours and sometimes came home late because I was trying to advance my career and provide well for us financially. But Karen had been documenting my work schedule and presenting it to her attorney as evidence of abandonment and neglect. She was claiming I prioritized work over our marriage. She was painting me as an absent husband who didn't make time for his wife. When the reality was, she'd been pushing me away for months while secretly talking to Derek every night. She'd been keeping detailed records of everything. She told Derek she had a journal documenting dates and times when I worked late or traveled for business. She had copies of text messages where I'd told her I'd be home late. She'd been screenshotting our conversations to show the attorney. Every piece of normal married life communication had been saved and twisted into evidence that I was a neglectful husband. Karen also mentioned she'd been careful about money. She'd been moving funds from our joint accounts into separate accounts her attorney had helped her set up. Small amounts at a time so I wouldn't notice. She was hiding money that legally belonged to both of us so she'd have cash available when the divorce started. She was systematically stealing from our marriage while pretending everything was fine. The affair with Derek had been going on for 8 months. They'd met through some online professional networking group related to her marketing work. They'd started chatting casually about industry topics. Then the conversations became more personal. Then they started video calling. Then it turned romantic and sexual. For 8 months, Karen had been falling in love with another man while lying to my face every single day. They'd met in person twice before. The first time was 5 months ago when Karen claimed she had a business conference in San Diego. She'd actually flown to California to spend a weekend with Derek in a hotel. I'd wished her well on her trip and told her to have fun at the conference. She'd come home and told me all about the sessions she'd attended and the people she'd met. All lies. She'd spent the weekend in bed with Derek. The second meeting was 3 months ago during another supposed business trip. This time she claimed she was going to a client meeting in Los Angeles. Again, she'd actually been with Derek. They'd spent 3 days together that time. She came home with gifts she claimed clients had given her. Derek had bought them. I'd been completely fooled both times. Now they were planning for Karen to move to California permanently once the divorce was finalized. Derek had a good job there and made decent money. They'd already looked at apartments together online. They'd discussed what neighborhood they wanted to live in. They'd planned their whole future together while I was kept in the dark funding Karen's life and trusting her completely. The betrayal was so complete and so calculated, it was hard to comprehend. I had my phone in my pocket the entire time I was hiding in that closet. At first I'd been so shocked and horrified by what I was seeing and hearing that I just froze. But as the conversation between Karen and Derek continued, and I learned the full scope of their affair and her divorce plans, something clicked in my brain. I needed to document this. I needed proof of what was happening. If Karen was building a case against me with lies and manipulated evidence, then I needed real evidence of what she was actually doing. I carefully pulled my phone out of my pocket, trying not to make any noise that would give away my position in the closet. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. But I managed to open the voice recording app on my phone. I started recording everything. The audio quality wasn't perfect from inside the closet, but it was clear enough. You could hear Karen's voice distinctly. You could hear Derek's voice coming through the laptop speakers. You could hear every word of their conversation. I recorded them talking about their affair. I recorded Derek saying he loved her and couldn't wait to be together. I recorded Karen saying she loved him too and was working on getting divorced. I recorded their explicit sexual conversations and the sounds of what they were doing. It was painful to listen to, but I kept recording because I knew I needed this evidence. I needed proof that my wife was having an affair while planning to divorce me and claim I was the negligent spouse. I recorded the parts where Karen discussed her divorce strategy, her admissions about manipulating our sleeping arrangement to create false evidence, her plan to document my work schedule as abandonment, her lawyer's advice about how to maximize her settlement, her secret bank accounts where she'd been hiding money. Every detail of her scheme to financially destroy me while pretending to be a loving wife was captured on my phone's recording. I recorded them discussing their previous in-person meetings, Karen admitting she'd lied about business trips to spend weekends with Derek in California, them laughing about how I'd believed her stories about conferences and client meetings, them making plans for future trips before the divorce was finalized. All of it documented and saved on my phone as evidence of her adultery and deception. The battery on my phone was getting low from recording for so long. I was terrified it would die before I got everything I needed. But I kept it recording anyway. This evidence was too important. This was my defense against the lies Karen was planning to tell in divorce court. This was proof that she was the one destroying our marriage, not me. This was documentation of her affair and her calculated plan to manipulate the legal system. I stayed hidden in that closet for 3 full hours while my wife conducted her affair in our bed, just feet away from me. 3 hours of listening to the woman I loved tell another man she loved him. 3 hours of hearing her plan my financial destruction. 3 hours of documenting the complete betrayal of our 8-year marriage. My legs were completely numb. My back was in agony, but I didn't move. I stayed frozen in that closet, recording every word. Around 1 in the morning, Karen and Derek finally started saying goodnight. They talked about how much they'd miss each other until tomorrow night. They made plans for their next video call. They said "I love you" multiple times. Then Derek logged off and the laptop screen went dark. Karen sat there for a few minutes smiling to herself. Then she got up and went to the bathroom. I heard the water running as she got ready for bed. When she came back, she changed out of the lingerie and put on regular pajamas. She got into bed and turned off the light. I stayed in the closet, barely breathing, waiting to make sure she was asleep. I had hours of recorded evidence on my phone. Evidence that would destroy her divorce case and expose her lies. The locked bedroom door she thought protected her secrets had actually trapped her with a witness who documented everything. I waited until around 2 in the morning when I was absolutely certain Karen was asleep. I could hear her breathing deeply and evenly from the bed. She'd rolled over onto her side, facing away from the closet. I very carefully and slowly slid the closet door open just enough to squeeze through. Every tiny sound felt deafeningly loud in the quiet bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might wake her up. But she didn't stir. She was completely asleep, exhausted from her 3-hour video session with Derek. I crept across the bedroom floor, moving inch by inch toward the door. The hardwood floor creaked slightly under my weight, but Karen didn't wake. I reached the bedroom door and very carefully turned the deadbolt to unlock it. The click sounded loud to my ears, but Karen kept sleeping. I opened the door slowly and slipped out into the hallway. Then I quietly closed it behind me. I'd made it out of the closet and out of the bedroom without being detected. I went downstairs and grabbed my laptop and some clothes. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. I couldn't pretend everything was normal after what I'd witnessed. I got in my car and drove to a hotel. I checked in and went straight to my room. Then I spent the rest of the night backing up the recordings from my phone to my laptop and to cloud storage. I made multiple copies because this evidence was everything. This was my entire defense against Karen's lies. First thing Friday morning, I called a divorce attorney. I'd researched divorce lawyers before and had a name ready. I made an emergency appointment for that same day. At 9 o'clock, I was sitting in the attorney's office explaining my situation. I showed him the recordings I'd made. He listened to portions of them, and his eyes got wider with each minute. He said this was some of the most damning evidence of adultery and divorce manipulation he'd ever seen in his career. My attorney immediately began preparing divorce papers. We filed that same afternoon. The papers included accusations of adultery, supported by the recorded evidence. We also filed a motion to freeze all joint accounts so Karen couldn't move any more money. We requested she be ordered to return funds she'd already hidden. We asked for a favorable settlement given her affair and her plan to commit fraud in the divorce proceedings. The divorce papers and my attorney's letter were delivered to our house by courier Saturday morning. The letter explained that I had been hiding in the bedroom closet the entire night of her video call with Derek. It stated that I had recorded everything, including her affair, her divorce planning, and her scheme to manipulate evidence and hide money. The letter said all recordings would be submitted to the court as evidence. Karen called me 17 times that Saturday morning. I didn't answer. She left voicemails screaming and crying. First, she denied everything. Then she admitted it but claimed it wasn't what it looked like. Then she got angry and accused me of violating her privacy by hiding in the closet. Then she begged me to talk to her and work things out. I deleted every message without fully listening to them. I was done. The divorce process took about 4 months. Karen tried to fight it at first. Her attorney tried to claim the recordings were illegally obtained. But my attorney argued successfully that I had every right to be in my own bedroom closet in my own house. There was no expectation of privacy when conducting an affair in the marital bedroom. The judge agreed. The recordings were admitted as evidence. Once the judge heard portions of the recordings, Karen's case completely collapsed. All her claims about me being neglectful and abandoning the marriage were exposed as lies. Her manipulation of our sleeping arrangement was revealed. Her affair was proven beyond any doubt. The judge was not sympathetic. Karen got nothing in the settlement. No alimony, no house, just her personal belongings and half of what remained in accounts after legal fees. She thought locking our bedroom door every night protected her secret affair and her scheme to destroy me financially. Instead, she locked herself in with a witness hidden in the closet recording every word. The door that was supposed to keep me out actually trapped her with the evidence that destroyed her entire plan.